Hello and welcome to the Front Row Back Row podcast. My name is Dr. Owen Campbell, and it's a solo pod today. As our longtime listeners know, that this is usually a two-man team, but today we're going to be talking about 3 tips to unlock hiring. One of the biggest things that we see in our mentorship group, but we also hear about from other PT owners, is that the biggest bottleneck for a lot of companies, especially once you've gotten over maybe one, not even one employee really nowadays, is hiring somebody. And we have a lot of owners that either were a manager maybe at a bigger company, but even then, some of them, a lot of them actually weren't managers. This is their first time in stepping into a managerial role. So in my history, I've managed 6 clinics. I probably hired about 100 PTs in my time before I started my own mobile cash pay practice. So I have a pretty good experience and a good knowledge about how to attract good talent, how to keep them, things like that. So today I'm going to go over my 3 tips, 3 big tips. There's a lot of stuff, but the 3 main ones on how either a small practice owner who's looking to grow can get a lot better at hiring just by some basic habits that they find, or even bigger companies, right? That I've seen some pretty horrible, just spend a bunch of money on Indeed and hope stuff works out type of strategies from companies that you think would know better. So hopefully these things will help. So first thing is you should always be hiring. That is just like they say for sales, you should always be selling, right? You should always be hiring in PT. If you think of a bottleneck as a for a business, something that limits your growth. If I could wave a magic wand and say, okay, what is the one thing that I could fix today that would make it better for you? I'd probably say a good portion. I don't want to say put a number on it, but if you're below $1 million in revenue for your business, you're really focused on marketing. But a lot of people they're buzzing up, right? They're maybe at $300,000-400,000 in revenue, or projected to be that way, and they're kind of hitting this cap where even though they're not at $1 million and they don't have the quote unquote rule, right, where marketing should be your only focus, you're limited by time and physical therapy. So you have to hire that person. And you should be starting to think of making these contacts, looking at advertising yourself as a place to work, probably honestly as a solopreneur when you're about halfway to 3/4 of the way full. Right. If you have seasonality in your business, maybe right before a busy season, but you should be thinking about that. Right. So, for example, in my business, I'm a cash pay solopreneur at this point, and I'm going to go into a busy season here. Well, I know if I'm not starting to send out, DMs to people I used to work with or whatever, that if I don't do that now, then I won't have anybody interested in maybe taking the overflow that I start to get in the winter months here in Scottsdale. So that is what you want to be doing, is you always want to be looking even in the early stages of where's my next hire coming from. It should not just be something that you look at when you say, oh crap, I can't get patients in for 2 weeks. Well, I guess I should probably go send some DMs. This should be something you're doing all the time, just like you're marketing all the time. You also want to know your goal for your business with this always be hiring strategy. If you are looking and saying, I want to be cash pay only in a niche that I am the guru for pelvic floor, right? And I just want to raise my prices as high as I can, in a reasonable level, and then just only have to worry about me. Well, this, you probably wouldn't clicked on this podcast. A lot of people that want to do that company of one mentality, they will still run into a spot where they can't handle the business, and they know that they want to have someone who maybe they could offload a patient or two to. But for the majority of people, you kind of want to know, okay, I want a location. I might want to take insurance down the road, right? If I want to get something where I can build it bigger and maybe sell it, later on in my career. I may want to be in a location, right, where I can take advantage of space, still stay cash, still stay niched, right? But maybe I need 2 or 3 rock stars to make this so that it's not just me my patients want to see. I have some awesome therapists there. So knowing what you want to go in your direction will guide that always be hiring mentality. Okay, so guys, if you liked this information, some of this more tactical stuff, please share this with a friend, another PT clinic owner, any healthcare clinic owner. We want to grow this podcast. We want to help as much people as possible. So we'll go into now the second major bullet point here. The second of the three tips is networking. Right. So we talked a little bit about it in the first one, but networking can take many forms. And what I think that I find physical therapist owners and just healthcare owners in general don't look at is they think that networking was what they did to maybe get a job when they were an employee, right? Or if they were in a big corporate company to maybe get a promotion, right? So I know when I was with one of the biggest fish in the sea, everybody had a LinkedIn account. You were constantly saying, "Great job, John," or "Congrats on your success. Let's synergize on a leverage product, whatever, later." All that garbage, right? So everyone who's maybe broken out of the corporate mold will look at that and say, I don't want to do that again. Screw LinkedIn. Like, my patients don't come from LinkedIn. I'm not going to get on there. I'm here to tell you, you need to be on LinkedIn, right? If only for the fact that there is a reference page for someone who might be saying, "Hey, is this company real? Or what do they do? Or what's this guy like, right? Or what's his experience?" You want to have a good setup LinkedIn profile, and you probably do want to invest in premium if you're in the hiring phase. This will give you a lot more maybe cold reach outs, right? Where you can look and message people when you just put in a search that says, physical therapists, golf, Phoenix, Arizona. Typically, you can't just cold email them or you can't cold message them. But if you have a premium account, you can do a little bit more things like that. It gives you more optionality with your profile, helps you to fit a little bit higher in searches. And then the other part of that is, again, always with the always be hiring, you can make connections. You can see somebody write a post and say, "Oh yeah, I vibe with that. Like, let's connect. Let's do this. Let's do all that." And if only all it is to just to get a 20-minute conversation of like, "Hey, what do you do? This is what I do." You never know where that person's going to be, and especially if you're in a niche, right? You may be the only person that does what you do in an area, or at least that person knows. So, like, to give you an example, I'm happy to reach out to a pelvic floor physical therapist as a golf PT, right? Because there's going to be times where they're going to get people and they're going to say, "Man, I really my significant other loves golf. And my God, his shoulder's killing him and he won't shut up about it. Or her hip is killing her and she won't shut up about it." Well, they're going to trust that pelvic floor therapist to give them a recommendation for another physical therapist. And then I might be great for that. Same thing works with PTs and with hiring. They are going to say, "Oh, maybe you're not the greatest person for my pelvic floor company, but I know a guy who only treats golfers. Maybe you want to give him a call." And then they might send you a DM and say, "Oh my God, I'm so interested. I'll wait 6 months until you have an opening." You always want to have that roster of people who would be happy to pick up your phone call if you did have an opening. You want that to be a backlog. And the only way you do that, again, is getting a network, and the internet really helps you with that. So, like, LinkedIn is a great option for that. um, and then the other thing too with this networking bullet point, the last thing on the second bullet point, is do not discount your regular networks, meaning your neighbors, your school PTA if you have kids, your CrossFit gym, your whatever, right? There are a lot of people who know physical therapists, right? Either I got a cousin who's a physical therapist or whatever, and PTs will travel for jobs, especially if it's a cool job, if it's something that they want to do. So do not be afraid to talk to your neighbor and say, "Hey, if you know a PT, like, have them call me. I'm looking." It is not weird, sketchy, whatever. It is a way, just like any other, of getting your name out there. And who knows? Some of the best hires that I've gotten in the past are from people who say, "Oh yeah, my a patient who says, 'Oh, my cousin's a PT,' right? Maybe we'll do that. We'll hire the guy, and he was awesome. He ran a clinic for us, right?" So reach out to patients, obviously, but also, reaching out to your network of that. I know I didn't do it personally, but my boss, the owner of the company, the CEO of the company that eventually sold for eight figures, she had such a diverse and good network within the city that she could just pull out her phone and call somebody and say, "Oh yeah, didn't you have a cousin that was a PT?" And she kept a record of it so that she wouldn't be in the situation. Um, so think about that, right? Don't just stop at LinkedIn and professional networks. And the last thing I want to say, and this kind of all ties in, is that social media is your friend, not just for patients, but social media is a way of getting new hires, right? So think about it this way, just put yourself in the shoes of maybe before you started your business or just as you started your business, but you're trying to figure out, okay, what's the marketing like? What is the guy down the street who's been in business for 5 years? What's he doing to get patients on social media? And you would scroll through their stuff. And what are the thoughts, right? Well, this is pretty patient centric, but that looks pretty sweet. They got some great equipment in that gym. Or, oh, this is he's doing a testimonial of a CrossFitter. I love working with CrossFitters. That's awesome. That seems like a cool place to work. And then you keep going through and you cycle through and you start realizing, okay, as a physical therapist, I'm taking this patient-centered uh information, right? This marketing, but it's actually marketing me, right? If I'm at a dead end job at a corporate place and they just told me that they're going to give me a raise, but only gave me 1% or whatever it is, and I start saying, "Ah, this place sucks. What am I going to do? I'm going to scroll on I'm going to scroll on Instagram. I'm going to scroll on Facebook. I'm going to maybe follow two or three things. Oh man, that'd be great if they had an opening, right? The way that you can make social media leverage is obviously you got to ask, right? You can't just sit there and say, okay, I'm going to look cool when people come to me. Don't be stupid. Put the ask in your stories or in any of the posts that you do. But you also want to make sure that you're either doing one of two really important things. You're either very patient centric, but you're highlighting the stuff that you have, right? Or your expertise, especially if it's a one or two person shop and this possible PT might be working directly with you. You want to really highlight you. So that's nice. That works for PT, that works for patients, and it also works for marketing to PTs. The other thing that you really want to make sure that you're doing is that you are well, you could either do that, or if you're bigger, and this is what the bigger companies who are good at hiring do, is that they focus on some of the major ways of reactivating their clients, but it could also help reactivate or kind of push a new hire into their network, right? Or a new therapist in their network. The ways that you do that is you want to highlight any charitable giving or anything that you're doing to help your community, right? Now you'd be doing that anyway for patients, but it's a really good thing to do. Obviously, the education stuff is good too. That again, what we talked about, the two that highlights you, any sort of achievements that you've had, right? These are the main three things, by the way, bonus tip. If you want to do retargeting or reactivating your own client list, any charity that you do, any education that you do, and any achievements that you guys have had, 1 year anniversary, whatever like that, great excuse to reach out to your current clients, right? And if you want to reactivate them in slower times. But if you're using those, you can use those as also ways to show other therapists, hey, we give back to charity. There's a purpose here. This is where you can really define your purpose. This is why I started my company. Patients love that, but also physical therapists love that, especially if they're coming from bigger, more like private equity owned or anything like that. They're going to really resonate with you saying, I did this because, right? I saw this patient that I wanted to serve, and I could find no other way of doing it the way I wanted besides this, right? You want to also just be straight up out there of pushing the best place to work sort of vibe. So if I don't, they still do it, right? But it was a very popular thing when somebody made the best places to work list, right? So if you have one of those in your town, by all means, go for it. But typically, these are more corporations. This is like major grocery store chains or hardware stores or something like that. They're the ones that tend to sell the papers. People say like, "Oh, I got the best grocery store in my local area." You may not be able to afford that marketing, or at least it may not be a big enough it may not be the people that you want, but you can always put testimonials from your employees. I heard a great idea that Brian did where he just hired a videographer and had the videographer go and just hang out in the clinic and ask the therapist, hey, what are you doing with that guy? Right. Now, of course, he signed disclosures and made sure that every patient who knew that, for this 2 hours you may be on video, they kind of scheduled the patients who were okay with that. But what it did is it allowed the therapist to say, hey, this is the cool crap I get to do, right? This is the stuff I get to do. And it's not scripted. It's not, the owner saying, hey, say these 5 things. They're just walking around and showing, hey, this is how I work on a guy's knee, or this is how I get to use the force plates, or this is how I get to whatever it is, right? Now, obviously, some places like say pelvic floor, that might not be an appropriate way of doing that, but you can always pull your therapist aside and just shoot a testimonial, right? A vertical video of like, hey, why do you like working here? Right. Hopefully, if you're a good enough manager and they do like working here, that's an easy ask, right? If it's not, there's a lot more podcasts that you should listen to about how to manage your team. But if you have at least one therapist that can do that, that's great. If you don't, it's not even a bad thing. If you're a solopreneur, go to an old person maybe you used to work with. Maybe you had a clinic and you managed a clinic for somebody, and they were your boss, right? Make it say, hey, I used to work for Owen and it was great. He was awesome. I'm really happy he's doing what he's doing for whatever, pushing the profession forward, something like that. It's still a testimonial of working for you. And that's something you can wind into your social media to say, like, hey, I'm good. Right. And that's patient facing and PT facing. So, these are my 3 major kind of tips to how somebody right now who's struggling, saying, "Man, I'm gonna have to hire somebody," and everyone says how competitive a market it is. Yes, there is competition. I'm not gonna sit here and say, do these 3 things and everything's working out tomorrow. But you will put yourself ahead of a lot of clinic owners if you're always in the always be hiring mindset, if you are constantly networking through not just the typical channels of LinkedIn and your PTA associate, your APTA association, but also your natural networks like your neighbors, all the other organizations. And then finally, if you're really leveraging social media as a tool to advertise working for you, as well as advertising your services to your patients. So I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions or comments, by all means, throw them down in the comments. We read them all. We like to respond to all of them. And as you probably know by now, we have a mastermind group. It's stuff like this. These are the conversations that we get into, especially very specific to the members of the mastermind group. So if you like this content, but you want something more specific to you, I encourage you to join our group. It's www.physio-growth.com. And I hope you have a great day.